How's it going, Yankee fans? Welcome back to Fireside Yankees with your boys, Alex and Ryan. Today, we're discussing the Carlos Correa kind of rumors that emerged a couple days ago and why they're likely out of that race. Why the sweepstakes is probably not going to include the Yankees. And then, of course, we want to discuss Carlos Rodon. Jack Curry of Yes Network said yesterday that his contract is in the demand of 7 years, $200 million. So pretty extreme amount of money. We want to discuss that if we think it's reasonable, justifiable, if we think they should go a little bit, less on the years or a little bit less on the money. There's definitely some conversation to be had there. So I want to discuss those two primary topics, Ryan. Before we do so, how you do today, my friend?
I'm doing great. I know the Correa news. I understand that that's going to be demoralizing in the sense of there is definitely an argument to be made. The Yankees in Correa is a phenomenal hitter. Last season, I believe he had a WRC plus of 140, which was his best mark since 2019. He's a great hitter. Don't get me wrong. He is a great player. There's no reason there's nothing that can be said to take away from what Carlos Correa is at the plate than what he is as a position player. But if they weren't going to go long-term for a shortstop last offseason, it doesn't really seem like something they would do to go out and go long-term for a shortstop this offseason, right? Even when Correa was given a 3-year deal, the Yankees, and basically it was basically a 1-year deal, right? Because he was going to opt out. That was a foregone conclusion. And yet the Yankees didn't offer him that type of money, or they didn't give him the contract that he was looking for. So the interest never seemed to be there, I guess. Or maybe they just didn't want to invest at shortstop. And we can argue whether that's the right move or not, but that's the direction the Yankees are going to take. I don't think it's a smart idea to shift your thought process from shortstop of going with your young guys. If that's what you were at last offseason, it doesn't really make sense to change directions, considering it's not like they've had any drastic shifts to that. This team needs outfield help. This team is trying to get Carlos Rodon. This team's focused on other things right now. In an ideal world, the Yankees run a payroll of $350 million and Carlos Correa is the starting shortstop. And, they package, one of the young shortstops for another premier talent. But that's not the world we live in. And that's not the world we're going to live in this offseason. So, working within the means of where the Yankees are going to be at budget wise, it just doesn't really make much sense for them to get Correa because they're not going to be able to afford him, right? It makes sense in the sense that if they could afford him, yes, but that's he's not in their budgetary plans. It would take a miracle to take the Yankees being able to move Josh Donaldson. Then on top of that, it's not just the 1-year commitment, it's the 10 years, right? It's probably a 10-year deal. The Yankees have Judge locked up. The Yankees have Cole locked up. The Yankees have a lot of long-term money. So it's not really something they're interested in doing. We can, again, go into whether that makes sense or not, but financially, that wasn't going to happen. So, that's kind of what's taking them out of it. It's not the Yankees being dumb or anything. It's quite simply Hal has a budget, Cashman has to fit that budget, and that's what it is.
Absolutely. It's financial, and it's also, variables of the youth prospects the Yankees have, right? You have Anthony Volpe, you have Oswald Peraza, you still got Gleyber Torres, you got Oswaldo Cabrera, you still got IKF on the roster, you still got Josh Donaldson on the roster. So, where does he actually play? Where does he fit into the molds? I mean, I think that an alternative to Aaron Judge would have been Correa or Xander Bogaerts. That would have been a good alternative to go in that direction, just bolster the infield and maybe trade for Brian Reynolds and trade away Oswald Peraza in the process. But in this instance, it doesn't really make much sense to go and get another infielder, especially if they have a lot of high hopes for Peraza, who seems to be a Gold Glove level defensive player. So I think they're kind of banking on him being very, very good defensively and then growing into himself as an offensive weapon. Maybe becoming super valuable, which is obviously an ideal situation. And then you have Anthony Volpe, who one of the Yankees' top development guys in a report, I think maybe this morning or yesterday, said that he's very close. He's almost ready to be an MLB player. So we have to imagine if he really kills it during spring training, they're not going to hesitate. They're going to elevate him, and he's going to be right in the mix. So Yankees have a lot of options there. Gleyber Torres, I don't think they're going to trade him this offseason. I think that probably you wait into the deadline because you don't know what's going on DJ LeMahieu's deal or his injury rather. If he's going to be healthy next season, you don't know how long it's going to take for Volpe to make that transition, or if Peraza is going to struggle. Having Torres, who at the very least is going to be a decent offensive player, and he's an above-average defender at second base, at least according to 2022's metrics. I think it's good to just kind of play it safe in that area. But with that being said, kind of all the reasons that Carlos Correa doesn't make a lot of sense for the Yankees at this point in time. Financially, like you said, 10-year deal. Yankees aren't trying to lock themselves up for 10 years on Carlos Correa. There's a reason that he's not being signed to a deal that long, right? Was he 28 years old? it's to me. You know what I mean? Like, nobody seems to be willing to give him that 10-year deal. Last year, he looked at the Twins, gave him a 3-year deal, high money. He opted out after the first season. Now he's looking for, again, that 10-year deal. Xander Bogaerts got it, no problem. Obviously, the Padres gave him a ton of money. But do you think there's a reason? Is it the back injury? Like, what's the issue here that you think is Carlos Correa is kind of for that long-term deal? Because right now, I don't really know what it is, but the injury seems to be the leading factor, if I had to guess.
Yeah, I mean, there's also the possibility that, this is a Boris client. Boris is notorious for drawing out negotiations. Perhaps he's trying to hit a certain benchmark and other teams aren't giving him that right now. But it was interesting that last offseason, as you mentioned, this is a guy who, it's not like he was coming off of a bad year. He took a prove-it deal coming off of a 6-WAR season at the age of 27. You know what I mean? That doesn't really happen. Even Bryce Harper, when he hit free agency, he was coming off of his worst season as a pro. He had I believe it was like a sub 2-WAR season. His defense was horrific. It wasn't a good year for Bryce Harper, and he got $300+ million guaranteed. Machado had up and down years consistently, where he would have seasons where he was more of a 3-WAR player, and then years where he was a monster, and he still got his $200 million guaranteed over 10 years. So it was definitely interesting to see that a 27-year-old player couldn't get a 10-year contract. That was definitely curious, and it definitely had something to do with medicals. I wonder if this year that clears itself up. He was pretty healthy last season, but the defense, the outfield average wasn't great. So maybe there are concerns about his long-term viability at the position. He has a great arm, which for me tells me that this guy should be able to stick at shortstop for a very long time, but who knows with the injuries. It is something to note that he didn't get a 10-year deal. I think the world of him. I think he's a top, 15, 20 player in the sport. But it is definitely, if this offseason ends with him getting 7 or 8 years and not 10 years, it's again going to be a very interesting, curious case as to why a 27-year-old and a 28-year-old coming off of seasons where he was a 133 and 140 WRC plus hitter in the prime of his career at the age of 27 and 28 couldn't get a 10-year deal. That'll definitely be interesting. But I still think the Giants are a team that are going to give him 10 years. I think they especially after missing out on Judge, it's kind of simple. You take the money you're going to give to Judge, you just give it to Correa, right? That it seems as simple as that. But we'll wait and see on that front. But it would definitely help for Rodon as well, because that would take the Giants potentially out of the Rodon sweepstakes. And that's probably the only team that you're too worried about giving the money to Rodon. But it'll be interesting to see what Correa's market shapes up to be, especially since the Yankees are going to be in that market. Boston isn't in that market right now. The Dodgers don't seem to be in that market. You kind of take out the big spenders. It kind of hurts your final dollar.
Absolutely. But looking over at Carlos Rodon, as I said before, $200 million over 7 years, right? The Yankees don't want to push beyond 6 years. We're seeing 4 to 5 years as their sweet spot at about $30 million per season. So it seems to me like Brian Cashman's willing to pay him 30. Carlos Rodon's willing to go down to 28.5 if they give him the 7 years. So the longevity, obviously that type of commitment is quite significant. But I personally don't like the idea of 7 years for Carlos Rodon. He's only pitched over 150 innings twice in his 8-year career. Set a career high of 178 innings this past season at 131 in 2021. So the injury history is pretty significant. He's had Tommy John, he's had biceps, he's had shoulder issues, wrist issues. He's had issues everywhere. Obviously the Tommy John being the most significant one, but he seems to have pushed past that, and it's in the past and not really hurting him anymore. Obviously 2 seasons back-to-back with sub 3 ERA. Just electric. His fastball slider combination is electric, elite level stuff. The question is, can you trust him to be a playoff contributor? He's never really made a playoff appearances in big scenarios. I think he had 2 appearances maybe with the White Sox 2 years ago or something like that. But other than that, nothing much. He hasn't really been that category. Can we trust him to maintain his level of efficiency after being fatigued an entire season? The Yankees, if they go into a deal with Rodon, they have to go into it knowing they're going to have to limit his workload pretty significantly if they want him to be his elite version during the postseason. You're talking about a lot of Clark Schmidt, a lot of Domingo Germán. With Rodon, you're probably trying to get him to around the 150 inning mark as his sweet spot so he can be ready to go during the playoffs. Otherwise, you're probably not going to get the best version of him. So you got to play a very fickle game with Carlos Rodon. Now, I would be more willing to go on a deal that's 6 years, but there's a club option for the 6th season. So let's say 6 years, $160 million, $30 million per season. Yankees get a club option for that 6th year. So if he's killing it, he proves his worth. He's dominating. $30 million for him will be a drop in the bucket. At the end of the day, the Yankees will have a lot of guys off the books by that time. Obviously, Josh Donaldson next year. Aaron Hicks will be gone. Rodon's deal will be coming, a little bit closer to an end, or rather probably to an end at that point in time. So $30 million for him, if he's playing really, really well, really aging like fine wine, I think it's fine. But right now, 6 years guaranteed seems like a little bit too much for me. 6 years with the club option is a little bit more reasonable. I could get on board with that. So, Ryan, when you're looking at this deal, what would your sweet spot be for Carlos Rodon and something that makes justifiable sense long term?
Yeah, so if I'm Brian Cashman, Hal Steinbrenner, I imagine the New York that's where their mindset is. If they're going to go 6 years, they don't want $30 million AAV. They need that AAV to drop, right? And I imagine that the Boris camp, Boris and his negotiating tactics, he does not want to go below $30 million at 6 years, right? And if he's going to go below $30 million, I think he wants that 7th year. I agree with you in the sense that I don't want to give him 7 guaranteed years, right? If you ask me, 7 guaranteed years or no Carlos Rodon, I'll incline to give him that 7th year. But a lot of reports indicate that the Yankees are the top they're really the top team for Carlos Rodon, right? The Giants don't really feel comfortable going to years 5 or 6 with Rodon. The Cardinals seem to be a little bit more unlikely. The Dodgers don't seem too interested in going long term. The Mets don't seem to have been communicating much as Rodon. It seems to be a situation not with the money, but they don't want to give up. They don't want to sign a guy with a qualifying offer attached, right? So you just kind of look across the board at what teams are going to be interested in Rodon. You get Baltimore, not really financially ready to make that commitment. The Twins, another team. Rodon doesn't like Minnesota, right? He didn't really want to go there. He got a 5-year offer from them last year, and he didn't take that offer. So it's something where it's the competition for Carlos Rodon for the Yankees is the Giants and maybe the Cardinals. But the Giants don't really want to go to those years. So if you're the Yankees, you have the best offer on the table. Rodon wants to play in New York. You kind of know that you have everything going in your favor. Why bend the knee for Scott Boras, right? This isn't the Aaron Judge situation. I know a lot of people yesterday were like, Jack Curry mentioned something about the Yankees maybe don't want to swim in those waters financially. Jack Curry works with Yes Network. Yes Network is a part of the New York Yankees. Do you think Jack Curry is going to go on there and say the Yankees are willing to do whatever it takes for Carlos Rodon? Absolutely not. And then the second thing is, no, this isn't the Aaron Judge or Garrett Cole sweepstakes, because there was other teams who were willing to give competitive offers for Aaron Judge and Garrett Cole. The Padres gave Aaron Judge more money. The Giants are willing to match what the Yankees are willing to go at. So, are we going to sit here and act like I'm not saying Rodon isn't good or that Rodon isn't worth anything on the market, but there are a lot of teams who have already tapped themselves out financially or aren't in the Rodon sweepstakes. The qualifying offer definitely took some teams out of it. Even with the Judge situation, right? The Judge market didn't take off the way it should have because Aaron Judge really only had 2 suitors outside the Yankees, and that was the Giants and the last minute the Padres, right? So, when you don't have a lot of teams in your camp, you kind of have to settle at some point, and Rodon is going to be a guy that might have to settle, right? So, look, the Yankees are not going to give him $200 million if that's his ask. The Yankees have 170, 180 million on the table, and that's the best offer, right? Why do that? Why bid against yourself, right? If another team comes around, the Yankees give them an offer, let's say 170 million, another team matches 170 million, then you go to 200 million. Then you maybe look at a 7th year. Then you figure it out. But you don't have to do that right now. Carlos Rodon is not going to disappear if he doesn't sign in the next week. You know what I mean? I think a lot of people have to understand the virtue of patience, especially when we're dealing with a Scott Boras client, especially when we're dealing with this market particularly. You're going to have to pay a lot of money. It's going to be a contract that I think a lot of people are going to say, well, coming into the offseason, this wasn't the money you thought Carlos Rodon was going to get. It's going to be more. But you have to be patient with these type of negotiations. The Yankees really want Carlos Rodon. Carlos Rodon really wants to be a Yankee. There is mutual interest, a lot of mutual interest. So, I'm not saying this is a guarantee. Nothing's a guarantee. But you're favored, and that's the best you can be without actually signing the guy. You know what I mean? You could be the favored team to sign. That's the best you can be without actually signing him, right? So it's not 100% chance. There's a chance he does, something falls apart, right? But as of right now, it's the likely outcome. I think where a lot of people are experiencing fatigue with the Rodon news. I understand. Every tweet is the Yankees love Rodon. The Yankees love Rodon. The Yankees have an offer for Rodon. You know what I mean? And it's not Rodon signing. I think I could say a week ago, I was convinced Rodon would sign with the Yankees, and we're still at the same spot this time, right? Nothing's changed. It's just time has passed. And that doesn't necessarily, that's probably a good thing for the Yankees. It means that Boras hasn't gotten another competitive offer. It means the Yankees are still the only team with that top offer. Who knows? Maybe he ends up signing for less than we thought he would. Maybe, we pull him down from $200 million, or we pull him down from that 7th year. Patience is key. It's key to be patient. I think if push comes to shove, the Yankees will give him a 7th year if need be, but ultimately, there's really no reason for any Yankee fans to be freaking out about the Carlos Rodon saga as of right now.
Yeah, look, if I had to guess, I would say that right now the Yankees are leading the pack. If someone was willing to go 7 years, 200 million, Rodon would already be off the board, right? If they were willing to do that, he'd be gone. It wouldn't even be a question. So, in my opinion, the Yankees are in the lead, but Boris, being Boris, obviously wants to get the best deal, and he's waiting. The longer he waits, the more he can potentially drive up the price tag, because Kodai Senga just went off the board. Chris Bassett's off the board. Most of the big names are gone. He has all the leverage. If something happens or a team comes out of the woodwork, realize, you know what, we actually like our roster, a big trades, and suddenly there's an opening for a starting pitching slot, and Rodon's, there's no point in them jumping the gun and not waiting. Like you said, time has passed, but not because the Yankees don't have the best offer, but because Boris is waiting for anything to happen. He's the best pitcher on the market. He has all the leverage. Why sign prematurely when we're months away from saying it? Doesn't, they could wait for months if they wanted to and wait for something to happen, an injury or whatever it might be. Anything could happen. So I understand it. I think the Yankees still have a good offer on the table. If I was to guess, if they go 6 years guaranteed, it's a done deal. If they go 6 years with the club option for the 6 years, that's probably where I think they're at right now, or at least where I would be. That they're probably waiting to see if they can push that to a guaranteed 6th season. 7 years, I think, is too much. I don't think anyone's going to go that far. But I'm definitely curious to hear your guys' thoughts in the YouTube comment section about Carlos Rodon, what you think a projected deal would look like, what you'd be happy with, what you'd be content with, or what might be a little bit extreme. Always really, really excited to see your comments below. As always, make sure to like and subscribe. Enjoy the rest of your day, and we'll catch you guys on the next Fireside Yankees episode.